listeners, to today's episode of the BizBlend podcast. Now, you know what, listeners? Growth always isn't just about numbers, it is about reshaping the way people see themselves and the world around them. Now, for this one, we are going to explore a story that sits at the intersection of business and beauty, of clinical precision and personal confidence. Cosmetic has quickly become one of Australia's leading cosmetic brands. But behind the glossy results and the booming demand lies a journey of vision, grit, and constant adaptation. And my guest today is the CEO of Cosmetic, the country's first accredited cosmetic clinic, and the driving force behind its rapid expansion. With nearly 20 clinics already thriving and a national franchisee program, opening doors for clinicians and entrepreneurs, this isn't just about building a business. It is about building a movement, one that touches people's lives in ways far deeper than skin. So let's dive in, not just into the opportunities and challenges of scaling one of the fastest growing industries in the world, but also into the deeper questions. What does it mean to create access, trust, and confidence at scale? And listeners, meet my guest, Dr. Vivek Eranki. So, Dr. Vivek, welcome to the show, and it's such an honor to have you here with us.
Hello, Sana. Thank you very much for having me back on, and great to be with you.
Super, super. So, Vivek, let's begin with trying to understand the defining strategies here. Now, um, you know, I think it's very safe to say that cosmetic has grown at a pace most businesses dream of. So, looking back, what do you think were the defining choices or strategies that allowed this rapid expansion to take root?
That's a very good question. So, from the get go, we approached the cosmetic sector with the same degree of scrutiny as we would any medical business. So, if you look at the background of what we've established in the past we've founded and scaled clinics in dental as well as general practice as well as day hospitals, all of whom has been acquired by larger corporates. So these medical businesses have a higher degree of scrutiny and a higher degree of governance and a very established medical framework that is required. And because of our previous background, we were able to bring those strengths to the cosmetic sector from the early stages. The other thing that we've focused on is the efficacy of treatments. If you look at the types of cosmetic treatments available, there's a
Mhm.
huge spectrum available. And the question that we always ask ourselves is this backed by evidence? So, unless it solves a problem predictably and safely for a patient, we didn't bring those treatments on board. And that's how we started off, and that's how we scaled.
Mhm. And it's really interesting to know that it's more about um, internal systems and leadership than timing or market readiness. So that is really interesting. Um, and You have launched a national franchise program that empowers entrepreneurs, clinicians to step into ownership, and that is very empowering. So, um, was this already in your mind when you started Cosmetic, or you kind of did this when you realized that there's a gap in the industry uh, that you had to solve?
Well, that's a very good question because we are the last large chain clinic that went down a franchising path. So if you look at all our competition, all of them have franchised early on. And what kept me away from franchising was the fear of losing control over the end result or the experience the customer may have. And
Mm.
we looked at what's worked and what hasn't worked with the other companies that have gone down the franchising path. And anyone who doesn't have a background or an understanding of the healthcare sector, bringing them in as franchise partners simply for a commercial benefit tended to backfire more often than not. So what the reason we went down the franchising path was we've had a lot of interest from very highly skilled doctors and nurses. And these are doctors and nurses that have experience in medicine, as well as nursing, as well as cosmetic treatments. But then simultaneously, they've got experience running businesses and the administration of businesses, whether it be their own business or their partners' businesses. And we opened the franchising pathway to those individuals first, and we've seen really good success there. And from there, that's the path that we are now proceeding down. I mean, we get a lot of interest. So we've had more than 300 inquiries in the last month alone. And the issue that we have isn't finding suitable franchise partners, but in a very predictable way, trying to rule out the ones that would not understand the complexities of scaling a healthcare business.
Hmm. So I think you know it's very safe to say because yeah, it definitely involves a lot of because franchise model, it's very capital intensive. um it requires a lot of patience and understanding. uh you didn't immediately jump onto it because your other competitors were already into this. So you took time to understand the backbone in there, the problems in there, and then you very mindfully approached it. I think that is something many entrepreneurs, especially the in the early stage, it's very kind of obvious that we have to tend to the trends, or ways to compete with our competitors. How much, I mean, uh, like, what were your main surprising findings when you started with expanding into the franchisee model?
One of the interesting things that we found is actually something that you just touched on, which is the capital intensity of opening a business. Because before we went down the franchise path, we've had 17 clinics already. We've already established economies of scale. So if you're a brand new company that is attempting to franchise and you've got one or two corporate clinics, you haven't yet achieved economies of scale. So you're not able to negotiate better prices on with your suppliers. We've already done that. So as a result, for somebody to open a cosmetic franchise is actually very cost effective. So one of our franchisees, for example, opened a cosmetic in one of the outskirts of Perth in a suburb called Baldivis. And the fit out was, I think, some total of about what, $12,000, $10,000, and the equipment was about $30,000. And the franchise fee as well is very affordable at around $10,000. So she was able to get up and running for just shy of 40,000. And remember, all the equipment is financed. And when we compared that with what's happened with other companies that franchise too early, we are aware of many cases where people have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on getting a very similar equipment simply because the franchisor hasn't had the opportunity to prove their concept in the market. And as a result, suppliers were not comfortable extending very good terms to the franchisees. But we've already done that, and that turned out to be a huge advantage for us. So, and the reason for that is if you're a franchisee and you were to spend your hard-earned money opening a clinic, you want to get returns on of the investment very quickly.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that's a position that our franchise partners are in, and this is the reason why we are very careful in who we select. And the reason for that is we want to pick people who prioritize clinical safety as well as customer service, so that it promotes the brand and thereby attracting more customers and more franchise partners. and it benefits everyone basically.
Hmm. That's really impressive. And also, um, we also try to touch the challenges here. Now, every fast growing brand will also face growing pains as well. What's been one of the toughest challenges in balancing clinical standards, then patient trust, and then along with that rapid expansion, Vivek?
I think the biggest strength and the biggest weakness of any company are the humans, right? So the biggest strength that we have are our nurses. So our nurses and our doctors, for example, are the ones that tend to our patients, and hence we look after them. We always review their performance, provide them additional training. But on the same token, sometimes you don't really understand how somebody will be with patients until they start with the patients. And that's
Mm.
where also the biggest weakness of any human intensive business lies, or a service based business lies, in that you don't understand the person until they're in the role. But what we found is we are very good at maintaining good talent. But on the same token, if somebody is not acting in the best interest of the customers or the patients, we've employed a strategy of offboarding them very quickly in order to minimize any reputational damage. And I think the biggest hurdle that any business faces is understanding who the right person is for the right job. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't find a high correlation between how somebody interviews and how they perform in real life. I mean, some of the nurses and doctors who are exceptional were very mediocre in their interviews, whereas we also found that some of the people that were mediocre in their roles were exceptional in their interviews. So it's hard to find correlating factors. That I think is the biggest challenge of any business. The other big challenge is obviously the moving parts involved. So, and again, when you're delivering medical care to patients, there's a lot of supplies that need to reach the clinic at the right time. There's reliance on IT services. So these are all things that occasionally, from time to time, may need additional reviews. But yeah, I would say that that's a secondary concern of any company.
That's and the first one is actually very, very surprising, Vijay. Very surprising. Mm, okay, okay. And since each clinic is this, every franchise is like a, a replica of the main one. How do you maintain a sense of local trust in each clinic while still pushing national consistency?
We have a very standardized set of policies and procedures. So from the start, all our clinics have nurses that are all trained through the similar pathways. They all use the same equipment, same suppliers, same scheduled medications, so same brands of Botox, same brands of fillers. So realistically, from a clinical perspective, the care delivered in any of these clinics is consistent across all of them. So with the corporate clinics, our nurses sometimes, for example, take a working holiday from one state to another state, and they want to work in one of our clinics while they're on their working holiday. And the access to the clinics and the layout of the clinic is exactly the same, so they fit right in. Now, on the same token, where strength is in consistency, the strength is also in the differences as well. So what we find is, again, when we bring in very strong franchise partners on board, it helps form the trust between the franchise partner or that nurse and the patient, because they have a degree of comfort that that nurse will be there for a very long time, and that they can forward plan all their treatments, and they form a very healthy rapport with the nurse or the doctor in those clinics.
Mm, yeah, yeah, I think. And I think uh, it's a very good example of how um, crucial it is to maintain that balance between human connection and then the brand systems. And definitely, I think every modern business has to walk this tightrope. So it's very interesting to see an example in there becoming a success. Now, talking about cosmetic industry, Vivek, of course, it's often seen as driven by trends. Every we see different kind of trends becoming kind of a norm every month or every day maybe. How do you decide which services to expand into without being pulled into too many directions by the passing fads? I mean, do you completely go with every demand that you get from the customers, or you see the good and bad, the pros and cons, and then you decide to go with those trends?
We try to avoid trends because ultimately what happens is there are certain things that are classics, right? So, for example, a classic, beautiful aesthetic is something that is timeless. So regardless of if it's in the 1950s, 1960s, 70s, or 2025, a very proportional and symmetrical face is always considered beautiful. So
Mm.
anytime there is a fad or a trend, we find that that is extremely short-lived, and really jumping on these fads and trends isn't in our best interest to push for the customers. The next thing is what these fads and trends also require. So, in some cases, these fads and trends require us to use fillers or Botoxes or devices that haven't yet been tested properly. So, our mantra is always the same. Our mantra is always use tried and tested agents as well as devices that, as much as possible, can be reversed very easily and quickly. So, all the fillers that we use, for example, can be reversed immediately on the spot if somebody doesn't like their result. Some of the newer pillars can't do that. So we are very hesitant about jumping on fads. Now, over time, sometimes fads themselves get entrenched and become part of the normal vernacular as well as the normal tapestry of aesthetics. And under those circumstances, we are very happy to bring them on board. An example of this could be, for example, larger lips. There's been a huge spectrum of lip fillers from everything from extremely large to extremely small to disproportionate amounts of fillers in the upper and the lower lips. But when we started going into lip fillers, we've approached it from the perspective of what is classic and what the majority of patients find appealing. And this has helped us entrench ourselves as a market leader when it comes to injectable lip filler treatment. Now, more than 40% of our treatments are lips now. So that's
Mm.
how we basically approach it. We approach it from the a point of view of safety first, of something that can be reversed, as well as something that is timeless that patients will appreciate over the years. Um, and I think that approach is a safe approach as well, because if you look in Australia, Australians spend the highest amount per capita on cosmetic treatments than anyone else in the world. And more than 50% of Australian young females look at cosmetic treatments not as a luxury, but as a requirement. They put it at the same level as getting their hair done in terms of their requirement or daily or regular maintenance in order to look presentable. So when the treatments themselves have become entrenched into culture, we don't need to go after fads. We just need to do the basics and do them well.
Yeah, but that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, that's an interesting observation. Um, and of course, there's a considerable amount of criticism as well around the fact that not fact, but um, that cosmetic industry kind of feeds insecurity more than it empowers confidence. It's kind of portrayed. How do you respond to the idea that growth in this sector might actually deepen dependence rather than create freedom?
Yeah, there's criticism that is leveled against anything that is seen to improve the aesthetics of people, whether it be clothes, whether it be hairstyle. what we find is we never approach anyone from the perspective that you need cosmetic treatment. Our position's always been the same. Our position is no one needs cosmetic treatments, but if you do want it, we are here to deliver it in a safe, affordable, and predictable manner. That's always been a mantra. So none of our nurses are there to push treatments. None of our franchise partners are there to push treatments. They are there to provide a service when a patient wants to have something done. Now, if you look historically at pretty much any industry out there, anything from shoes to gyms to fashion to any personal services, all of them are designed to make you look aesthetically better than
Yeah.
otherwise. I'm not aware of any industry out there that is designed to make you look worse and lower your self-esteem. So I personally think the cosmetic sector is an amazing sector because what you're doing is you are treating young, fit, healthy people in a way that maximizes their self-esteem. And I can't think of any harm that comes to people by improving their self-esteem. Now, there are some people out there with insecurities, and that's called body dysmorphic disorder. So this is where what they perceive as aesthetically pleasing differs significantly from what everyone else perceives as aesthetically pleasing. Or or there are people out there where they want aesthetic results that are simply unachievable. Under those circumstances, we screen them out and we basically advise them that cosmetic treatments aren't for them. But for everyone else, I think the net benefits of improving self-esteem is phenomenal. I don't think that should be looked down, vilified, penalized at all. I think that should be embraced.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah. And before we conclude, Vivek, of course, what's your bigger vision for Cosmetic as a franchisee? Like, is it simply about the number of clinics, or is this something deeper you hope to change about the industry itself?
Our short-term goal is to partner with franchise partners that share the same vision as us. So we are very discerning in who we bring on board. We are very discerning in how we train them, how we help them succeed. So that's our short-term goal. Our long-term goal is to provide a network of clinics around the country and beyond that provide patients with a degree of comfort and a degree of safety that they are being seen by somebody who's well trained and has their best interest at heart, whether it be providing treatments in an affordable manner or providing treatments in a safe manner. Further to that, there are a variety of treatments that we are considering bringing on board that our clinical advisory committee is reviewing. Um, but again, they have to meet stringent requirements for us to bring them on board formally.
That feels, I think it's definitely it looks like a cultural mission. I think which makes the journey much more compelling. So that's really, really good to know, Vivek. So, of course, if our listeners they would like to go and check out Cosmetic, and they would also like to connect with you, what would be the easiest way?
The easiest way would be to go to our website. It's cosmetique.au. So that's cosmetiquue.au. And there is a whole section on there for franchisees, potential franchise partners, and there's a lot of information there for anyone interested in inquiring about having a cosmetic franchise. And our website also has a lot of information about different treatments available, as well as information about the different agents themselves. Our social media handle is the same, which is cosmetiquue.au for Instagram and Facebook. And again, there's a lot of information that we provide there as well.
Super, super. Well, I'll make sure to have all the details in the show notes in there. And I think it's very clear that um, building a brand like Cosmetic isn't just about business. It's about vision, courage, and then a willingness to navigate complexity. So thank you so much, Vivek, for kind of giving us a reminder that industries evolve because people push them to evolve. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sana. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Vivek, and to all the listeners out there, whether you are an entrepreneur, a clinician, or someone who is simply inquisitive about the intersection of beauty and business. I hope you have found the important insights here that challenge you to think bigger, not just about the profit, but about purpose. So, thank you to everyone for joining me on this blend. Until next time, keep blending your passion with possibility. Until then, this is your host, Sana, signing off. Thank you.